Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Men have dominated society for eons, but in the last 50 years, women have made remarkable strides, particularly in education and the workplace. Men, on the other hand, are not doing so well in terms of achievement, particularly men from disadvantaged backgrounds. As we look forward to Father's Day, we're joined by a psychologist who works primarily with men and boys. We'll look at what it takes to make a great father and a hero of his own life. We want to welcome Jason Frishman, a father, husband, therapist, and coach. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Fran.
So, I know this is a huge topic, but not all is well for men and boys. In 2021, I was shocked to read that the suicide rate is 4 times as high for men as it is for women. Gender achievement gaps, grades, graduations, college degrees have flip-flopped across our country, now in favor of girls. It was in favor of boys. Women's equality, of course, is very important, but not at the expense of boys. Not that that's what's really going on, but it's a concerning trend that's not really talked about that much. So what's your quick assessment of what's going on?
Well, it's being talked about more and more, which is lovely, and that's why I'm glad to be here. But I think what happens is that men who are more and more present in the home are not getting, we're more present, but we're not getting the emotional intelligence, the training, we're not being taught how to be more connected and present at home. And so what happens is we're more present, we think we're doing great, and then yet we're still more isolated and lonely than ever.
Wow. So has the concept of masculinity changed at all as men are spending more time in the home? Or maybe it hasn't, and that's part of the conflict? Or?
Well, it's interesting because I think we've come a long way. Certainly we're spending more time, and actually I would say, I don't even know if we're more isolated, but we're more aware of the isolation, right? That's a big distinction. And so the concept of masculinity certainly has changed, but it always has. Masculinity is a socially developed and constructed thing. And so it's developed over the years. But right now, there's a conflict, right? Who are we as men? Are we the strong, powerful provider type? Are we soft and sensitive? And, for me, we're always in the middle. We're always sort of a mix of all of them, right? I'll go out and chop wood for our home and then come in and, put a Band-Aid on my kid and cook dinner. Right? And so, or my wife is out mowing the lawn, and then she comes in, and and so I think roles, not that masculinity has changed, but the roles are always evolving based on what we need as a culture and a society, and we have a lot of catching up to do.
We do, and I'm wondering when you talk about those roles, it's also about new stories. What are the new stories that are surfacing about what it means to be a man? What's important about those stories from your perspective?
Well, I think to look at the new stories, we first have to just acknowledge some of the older stories, and we have had stories in our culture, whether we see them in movies or books or just what we tell one another, that, really limit what a man can be, right? They're the hero, the king, the prince, they're either good or bad, the good guy or the bad guy, the tough guy, right? And none of those things in and of themselves are wrong, but when they're not, they're constricted in such a way that those stories are quite literally oppressive to other stories, right? And so they crowd out other possibilities and potentials for men. And so other stories like we are caregivers and nurturers, right? We're tricksters. I think the dad joke is not only a silly kind of weird thing, but it's also a really important piece of, playing with words and puns and being silly. Men have more fun or can have more fun. They can be more connected. We can be relational in ways that are meaningful and valuable, and we have feelings.
Right. And we all don't have to be CEOs or...
Yeah, and even if we are, we can engage in different ways, right? It doesn't have to be based on domination and sort of end all be all, get everything. CEOs can be more connected and be more related and have more of a mission.
Yeah, as many of them do now.
Yes.
And many of them don't. So Father's Day is coming up on Sunday. What makes a great father?
Well, the name of my program is called The Connected Father. So simply, I would say a great father is a connected one, right? Who knows about his kids and his wife or a partner, in any way, like someone who can stop. I tell a lot of my guys, we always have an extra minute. And it's true, like most of the guys I work with, one of the things they'll talk about is time and the time crunch. And I absolutely believe we always have an extra minute. We always have a moment. If we are really aware of our values and what's meaningful to us, and we take a step back and say, as a father, I chose to make this family. And so these are the people whom I purport to care and love the most. I have another minute for them, and I'll take time for them. So I think a great father is someone who is connected and who challenges the ways that we were just talking about, right? Old stories of men, right? Like we can be a model for our kids so that they see that as a man, I get to challenge all of the sort of typical ways that men are in relationship with one another, with women, and so our kids see it. A connected father is an activist.
Right. I love that. It's so interesting because for many, fatherhood and motherhood as well can be scary. It can be a little overwhelming, which it is. There's a lot to do. So what are ways that you help men embrace fatherhood?
Well, I think first is naming all of those things, right? Just like the monster under the bed or in the closet, if you turn the light on, you can deal with it much better. So one of the first things we do is really start to identify the challenges. Men, for years, we're fine. I'm fine. I don't need anything. So challenging and saying, yeah, men have emotions. That's for real. And fortunately, I find that a lot of fathers, when they can go there, are ready to go there, right? Because having a kid, the first question I often ask men when they join Journeymen is, tell me your origin story of becoming a father. Tell me the story of not just when your kid was born, but when did the identity of dad or papa come in? Like, what was the thing? And I get guys who immediately choke up a little bit, or, because, right, holding your baby, or the first time they hold your hand, or, that moment when something inside changes. And we went from sort of guy to boyfriend, maybe to partner, maybe to husband, to father. Right? You have identity shifts all along the way. And when that happens, so we start by that. Then the next thing we often talk about are the values. Like, what's most important? And how do we take our big values, they're often very, I want to save the world kind of values, and put them in everyday mundane actions. So that in every day, I'm choosing to express what's most important to me with my family.
Is that then, you talk on your website of the father's journey?
Yes.
So is that what we're talking about here?
Absolutely. So the fatherhood journey really is, as you become aware of that identity shift, how do you then, become more and more of a father and more of a man or more and more of a human, to be honest. I mean, really. Oftentimes, when it first comes, when you first realize, oh man, I'm dad or papa, it's scary, and we can get away with a lot, honestly. Like, I can be half asleep on the couch and pat myself on the back that I'm letting my wife sleep in late, but I'm half asleep just rocking the kid and barely being there, And a lot of men do it. It's, but as we grow into being a father, we face challenges, we face these obstacles, and we have the tools to do it in a way that helps and changes everyone.
So you're the father of 2 boys.
Yes.
What's the most challenging issue for bringing up healthy and happy boys?
I think...
Even for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have 2 incredibly smart and sensitive boys. And they're aware, they're my biggest teachers. So I think for me, and it's hard to answer that question for everyone,
Sure.
but for me, really the biggest challenge, and it's also the biggest joy, is that they challenge me, they teach me. And I have to come off of the typical traditional stories of fatherhood and father knows best and all these things to hear them and to really be able to say, oh, now, if they're wrong, they're wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So it's taking sort of what I call radical responsibility as a father. So they'll challenge me and I have to stop and think about it.
Okay. I want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you, and I hope to continue the conversation. But you have a therapy practice, and you also offer group coaching with men. So in brief, what are those offerings, and how does somebody get more information?
So the first is we have a group coaching program called Connected Fathers, where it's a 3-month program followed up with a community membership program. And the best way to find that would be www.journeymanfoundation.com or email me directly, jason@nourishedconnections.com.
Okay. We have about 30 seconds. How does a man become the hero of his own life? Hard question.
Journey home, know your challenges, and face them with partnerships. I think that would be the easiest way to say it, right? The quickest and easiest one is understand your obstacles and seek partners to match and face them.
Awesome. Jason Frishman, good luck to you. Thank you for all that you're doing for men and boys in our region.
Thanks, Fran. I really appreciate it.
And thank you for joining us across the fence. I'm Fran Stoddard. Have a wonderful, happy Father's Day. Stay well.